Take a breath and remember this moment. Because 90 days from now, you could be someone the world no longer recognizes. Not because you shouted louder, not because you were lucky, but because you decided that enough was enough. You drew a line, you looked your old habits in the eye and said, "This is where you end, and I begin." You don't need more time. You don't need a better year, a perfect plan, or applause from strangers. You need a decision, a fierce, unshakable decision to become the person you've always known you were meant to be. Not someday, but now. That's what this journey is about. This isn't a motivational pick-me-up. This is war against your old self and the battlefield. It's inside you. You've spent too many days negotiating with your excuses, letting your emotions set your pace, and starting over every Monday, hoping this time will feel different. But hope is not a plan. Emotion is not a strategy. And motivation is a liar. It whispers sweet promises when you're inspired and disappears when you're not. It makes you feel good for a moment but abandons you when you're tired, bored, or alone. What you need isn't motivation. What you need is rhythm. What you need is discipline. The kind that doesn't ask how you feel. The kind that shows up whether the sun shines or not. The kind that rises not from excitement, but from identity. Because until your identity shifts, nothing else will. You want to feel stronger? Start proving it. You want to feel confident? Keep your word. You want to break free from mediocrity? Burn the backup plans. Shut the doors behind you. Don't leave yourself a return ticket to your old life. Because if you do, you'll use it. You will. And deep down, you know that. The person you were yesterday, the one who snoozed the alarm, who skipped the workout, who made a list and didn't follow through, that version of you doesn't get to dictate who you become unless you let them. And if you let them, you're agreeing to live on repeat. You're signing up for recycled frustration, recycled goals, recycled guilt. But if you're still listening, it means something inside of you is done. Done with the talk. Done with the fake starts. Done with that ache in your chest every time you break a promise to yourself. You're done explaining your potential. You're ready to become it. This is about 90 days of brutal honesty, of clear choices, of small, quiet decisions repeated without apology. This is about waking up tired and showing up anyway. About choosing silence over noise, stillness over stimulation, depth over distraction. This is about rebuilding your operating system from the ground up, not rewriting your to-do list, reprogramming your mind. Because your brain doesn't respond to dreams. It responds to patterns. It responds to what you do consistently, not what you think occasionally. You want to change? Then act as if there's no alternative. You want new results? Then become someone who doesn't negotiate with themselves. The version of you that's stuck right now, they aren't late. They're just too comfortable, too distracted, too used to giving up at the first sign of discomfort. But hear this. Discomfort is not a problem. Discomfort is the price of evolution. And every time you step into it willingly, you weaken the grip of the past. Don't ask the world to believe in you. Don't post about your plans. Don't seek approval for your ambition. Just act quietly, powerfully, day after day after day. Because the results will speak with a volume your words never could. You don't rise by inspiration. You rise by rhythm, by systems, by routine. Your old self will scream for you to stop, to rest, to relax, to take it easy, to start again next week. But you won't listen, because you finally realized that every time you surrender to that voice, you're not resting, you're retreating. And you didn't come this far to retreat. The difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck isn't talent, it's not luck. It's not some rare DNA. It's the ability to shut down the conversation with excuses. It's the decision to do the work even when there's no fire, no applause, no audience. That's what creates transformation, not hype, habit. You've believed the lie for too long, the lie that you need to feel inspired to act. But look at nature. The seed doesn't wait to feel ready. It pushes through dirt and darkness toward light, quietly, daily, consistently, and so must you. You don't need a spark, you need ignition, daily ignition. You need to light the fire yourself every morning, even if it starts as a flicker, because fire fed every day becomes a furnace no storm can touch. And storms will come, distractions will pull, old habits will return wearing new disguises, but you will not bow. Because you're not walking into this journey like the person you used to be. You're stepping in like a builder, a finisher, a force. And a force doesn't ask the wind for permission. A force doesn't ask the world to understand. A force simply moves forward, leaving proof behind in every step. Your transformation won't be announced. There won't be a billboard. There won't be fireworks. It'll show up slowly, in your voice, in your eyes, in the silence between your decisions. People will notice, but they won't understand. They'll ask what changed, and you won't have to explain, because your presence will carry the answer. That's the real power of discipline. It doesn't scream, it radiates. It walks into a room and changes the temperature without saying a word. Because discipline creates identity, and identity is stronger than willpower. When you become someone who acts without emotional permission, without needing to feel ready, everything shifts. Action becomes the trigger, not the result. Movement creates motivation, not the other way around. So what does that mean for you? It means no more waiting for a better time, no more waiting to feel ready, no more getting hyped by a video and forgetting the message by morning. It means today is the only doorway you've got. And if you don't walk through it now, you'll stay in the same room, living the same patterns, dying with the same regrets. But not this time. Because this time, you're choosing to anchor yourself in rhythm, not reaction. This time, you're choosing the quiet power of discipline over the noise of fleeting excitement. This time, you're choosing a system, a structure, a life that's no longer ruled by emotion, but by value. You've said enough, you've planned enough, you've read enough. Now you execute. Wake up and take back your morning. Strip away the chaos and create a routine. One that doesn't bend to your mood. One that doesn't care if it's cloudy or cold or lonely. Move your body, feed your mind, focus your energy, repeat. Don't aim to be perfect. Aim to be present. Show up for yourself every single day, especially when it's hard, especially when it's boring, especially when the world tempts you with comfort. Because it's in those moments, the ones you want to skip, where transformation is being built. You don't win because of what you do when it's easy. You win because of what you do when it's not. And if you can train yourself to act without permission from your feelings, your future is untouchable. People will say, take a break. People will say, you're doing enough. People will say, you deserve to rest. And they're right, you do. But rest is not retreat. And recovery is not abandonment. Rest to rebuild, not to escape. And when you rest, do it with intention, not with distraction, not with numbing habits that erode your identity. Rest in silence, in stillness, in clarity. Because if your rest is just another way to avoid your life, it's not rest. It's delay. You don't owe the world your updates. You don't owe anyone your reasons. You owe yourself the life you promised. And that life doesn't begin tomorrow. It begins the moment you stop negotiating with the old you and start becoming the version that's already waiting inside you. Steady, sharp, decisive, and undeniable. There is a voice inside you that has been quiet for too long, not the one that doubts, not the one that hesitates. That voice has had the microphone for years. No, I'm talking about the other voice. The one that whispers when everything is silent. The one that says, you were made for more. It's time to turn that voice into your compass, not your fantasy, your standard. Because the moment you accept discipline as a way of life, everything soft inside you begins to harden into resolve. You stop being a person who reacts, and you become a person who commands. Your days are no longer decided by emotion, but by structure. Your calendar becomes sacred, your habits become armor, and every decision, big or small, begins to reflect the new standard you've chosen. Most people don't get this far. They'll try for a week, maybe two, and then the old identity taps them on the shoulder and says, "You've done enough. Go back to comfort." And they listen, but you won't, because you now understand something most never realize, that change doesn't happen on the surface. It happens in the trenches, in the silent wars, in the small, thankless acts repeated without applause. That's where the new you is being built. Not in front of cameras, not on a stage, but when you do the work while no one's watching, when you shut off distractions, when you move your body even when it aches, when you finish your work even when you're tired. That's what builds weight in your voice, power in your presence, fire in your identity. You will feel resistance, not once but constantly. It's not a mistake. It's the signal, the sign that you're on the edge of a breakthrough. It will disguise itself as fatigue, as self-doubt, as boredom. But in truth, it is the boundary between your old life and the one you're about to claim. And most people never cross it. But you've come here for the crossing. You've come to burn the bridge and keep walking, to turn your back on compromise, to finally say, "I don't need another excuse. I need execution." And once you say it, once you mean it, the world around you begins to shift. Not because circumstances have changed, but because you have. Your identity no longer negotiates with delay. Your habits no longer ask permission. Your actions no longer wait for feeling. And this is where it gets beautiful. Because the more you stay in rhythm, the less you struggle. The more you follow your system, the more momentum begins to build. And suddenly, the weight of discipline turns into the lightness of flow. The mornings you once hated become your sanctuary. The workouts you once avoided become your meditation. The deep work you once procrastinated becomes your purpose. This is not fantasy. This is repetition. This is what happens when you move every day without apology. When you show up with integrity, whether you feel like it or not. It's not about perfection. It's about presence. Being there for your goals the way you promised you would. Because every time you show up when it's hard, when it's inconvenient, when no one's clapping, you send a message to your subconscious. I am someone who finishes. And that message becomes the foundation of a new identity. One that no longer needs to chase goals, because it lives them. Others will talk about changing. You'll do it. Others will wait for the right season. You'll create one. Others will post about their journey. You'll walk it, quietly, deeply, without delay. And when people finally notice, they won't recognize you. Not because you're louder, but because your energy has changed. Your decisions are sharper. Your words carry weight. Your presence speaks for you. And in that moment, you won't need to explain your process. You'll just keep moving, because you're not here for attention. You're here for transformation. There's a shift that happens when you stop relying on hype and start building your own fire. It's quiet. It's unassuming. No one celebrates it, but you feel it. In the way you speak less and act more. In the way you stop chasing validation and start honoring your own word. That shift is the beginning of power. Not the kind that demands attention, the kind that can't be ignored. You stop needing to prove anything. Not because you don't care, but because you no longer depend on anyone else to define your progress. You've watched yourself show up tired. You've pushed through the fog. You've kept going when it was boring, thankless, even painful. And now you carry something different, something unshakable. You carry trust. Trust in yourself. And that trust becomes your fuel. Because when the world tries to shake you, when people doubt you, when plans break, when setbacks come, you don't fall apart. You adapt. You recalibrate. But you never break your rhythm, because your rhythm is no longer based on conditions. It's based on choice. That's the secret the world won't tell you. That consistency is greater than intensity. That being steady is more powerful than being sensational. That showing up every day, regardless of mood or circumstances, is the most rebellious, most extraordinary act in a world ruled by impulse. And that's why this journey is not about 90 perfect days. It's about 90 uncompromising days. Days where you don't retreat. Days where you correct in motion. Where if you miss the mark, you don't spiral, you recover. because that's what real discipline looks like. It's not flawless, it's faithful. You're not aiming for a highlight reel. You're building a foundation, and foundations aren't built in public. They're built in silence, in solitude, in sweat, in self-reflection. And when you look back, not after a week, but after months of consistent action, you won't just see progress. You'll see a person you barely recognize, someone calmer, sharper, stronger, not louder, clearer. Because the chaos that once distracted you no longer has a grip. You don't reach for your phone the moment you wake. You don't fill every quiet second with noise. You've made stillness your ally. You've made solitude your tool. And in that space, you've started hearing a different voice. Your own. Not the voice that used to chase, or fear, or the one that simply says, let's keep going. That's the voice of alignment. That's the rhythm of someone who is no longer reacting to life, but designing it. You're no longer trying to fit in. You're building a life that fits you. You're no longer hoping for change. You're becoming the change. And the people around you, they may not understand what's happening. They may question your silence, your focus, your distance. Let them, because this chapter is not about them. It's not even about recognition. It's about you doing the hard thing consistently. Not because someone's watching, but because you've decided you're worth showing up for. That decision, repeated enough times, rewrites everything. You become someone who doesn't quit when it's hard, someone who doesn't flinch when it's lonely, someone who doesn't need to post results to feel worthy. You move like someone who already knows who they are. And when people ask, how did you change? You won't give them a step-by-step plan. You won't hand them a routine. You'll just smile. Because the answer isn't in what you did. It's in who you became while no one was watching. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? That first moment you notice you're no longer waiting for the right mood. You just act. Not because it feels good, but because it's what you do now. You don't scroll to escape. You don't snooze the alarm. You don't seek shortcuts. You just rise. And with each step, something settles inside you. A knowing, a presence, a power you didn't have before. That's what happens when you stop looking for evidence outside yourself and start building it within. You are the evidence now. Every choice you make, every boundary you set, every routine you honor. They're not just tasks, they're bricks in the structure of someone new, someone real. You see, most people will never get here. They'll search for secrets, for strategies, for systems that do the work for them. But you've already cracked the code. It's not about the tools, it's about the truth. And the truth is this: your actions will always speak louder than your desire. You don't rise by dreaming harder. You rise by acting longer than your emotions can argue. There's a point you reach, not when the world gives you permission, but when you give yourself no other option. That's when things begin to shift. Not overnight, not dramatically, but deeply, like the tide turning beneath the surface. Quiet, relentless, undeniable. People won't understand why you're different, why you don't chase drama, why you don't waste energy proving your worth, why you walk away from anything that drains your peace. But you won't need them to understand, because you're not living to impress. You're living to build. And builders don't explain the blueprint while they're still laying the foundation. They just keep hammering, keep stacking, keep showing up. And one day, when the structure is complete, the same people who doubted will call it impressive. But you'll know the truth. It wasn't the structure that was impressive. It was the silence, the work, the refusal to stop. This is what you're becoming. Not someone who needs ideal conditions to thrive, but someone who creates conditions through consistent action. Someone who doesn't wait for motivation, but becomes their own spark. Someone who is immune to the chaos of the world, because they are loyal to their own rhythm. And this rhythm, it doesn't need loud music or hype speeches. It needs space, simplicity, clarity. You protect your mornings like they're sacred. You guard your focus like it's gold, because it is. Focus is your edge, your superpower. And in a world drowning in distractions, your ability to sustain focus will separate you from the crowd. So let them chase trends. Let them bounce from one goal to the next. You stay rooted. You stay deliberate. Because you're not interested in temporary highs. You're here for a total rebuild from the inside out. And you know by now, it's not about how fast you move. It's about how long you stay aligned. And when you live like that, when your habits are non-negotiable, your environment is intentional, and your presence is grounded, you don't just change. You become unshakable. You stop doubting your pace. You stop comparing your path. You realize you're not behind. You're just building deeper. And depth, that's what lasts. Depth is what separates the fleeting from the permanent. It's what makes your actions carry weight, even when no one is around to see them. And the truth is, you no longer crave recognition, because you've realized the most powerful change doesn't announce itself. It arrives in silence. It doesn't scream for attention. It simply becomes undeniable. That's what happens when discipline becomes your home. When your calendar isn't a list of hopes, but a map of commitments. When you no longer wait for a mood, because your mission doesn't run on emotion, it runs on intention. People who operate on intention don't need alarms to remind them of their values. They wake up already aligned, not because every day feels good, but because they've chosen not to negotiate with their excuses anymore. They don't ask themselves, do I feel like it? They ask, is this who I am? And they act from the answer. You're that person now, the one who no longer folds under fatigue, who doesn't let a bad day rewrite a strong month. You've trained yourself to hold steady when everything else wobbles, and that steadiness is rare. That's why people notice something different about you before they can even name it. It's in your pace, your posture, your silence. Because silence, when fueled by purpose, is magnetic. You don't have to explain your discipline. It speaks for itself. In the way you walk into a room, in the way you say no cleanly without guilt, in the way you protect your time, your space, your energy, like your life depends on it. Because it does. Your life depends on your ability to keep promises to yourself, especially the quiet ones, the ones no one claps for. That's what separates leaders from followers, builders from talkers, finishers from dreamers. The ability to keep showing up when no one's checking in on you, when there's no reward, no praise, no spotlight. That's the moment where most fall off. But you rise there. That's where you've learned to grow, because you've figured it out. Your strength isn't in how loud you are. It's in how consistent you've become. You've turned habits into identity. You no longer have to push yourself out of bed. You just rise. Not because it's easy, not because it's convenient, but because you've rewritten what's normal. Your new normal is waking up with intention, moving your body when it's tired, journaling even when your mind is blank, choosing silence instead of scrolling. Not because these things are magical on their own, but because they are the rituals that tell your nervous system, this is who I am now. You've become someone who doesn't just do, you embody. You don't chase greatness. You operate from it. It's not a destination. It's your baseline. And while others are still asking how to start, you've become proof that the starting line isn't external. It's internal. It's the moment you stop asking for a path and start walking your own. You've created something sacred. Not a perfect schedule, a powerful rhythm, one that won't collapse when life gets messy, one that won't vanish when you're tired or sad or misunderstood. Because it wasn't built on emotion. It was built on values, on standards, on choices made day after day, even when no one applauded. That's how legacies are built, quietly, repetitively, with the kind of self-trust no one can give you, only you can earn. That self-trust is your foundation now. It's what steadies you when the world pulls at your attention, when comfort calls you back, when no one else understands what you're doing or why. You no longer need external validation. You've become your own confirmation. Every check mark on your tracker, Every early morning, every silent victory has written a truth so deep into your nervous system that no opinion can erase it. And this is where the real power begins to unfold. Not when you hit a goal, but when the system becomes a part of you. When you no longer think about doing the work, you just do it. You no longer hype yourself up. You just begin. There is no more waiting for the right time. The time is already programmed into your being. You've stopped trying to feel motivated because you understand now emotion is a wave. You're an ocean. And oceans don't move because the wind tells them to. They move because they are pulled by something deeper. That's you now. Pulled by purpose, pulled by a rhythm that doesn't skip, pulled by a system that works even on the days you don't feel like working. And maybe no one will see the full scope of what you've endured. They won't see the moments you wanted to quit and didn't. The evenings you showed up despite exhaustion. The days you acted with no visible result. But you'll know, and that knowing is the root of confidence. The kind that doesn't have to shout. You've built what most people only talk about. You've created consistency in a world addicted to chaos. You've carved a path through the noise without asking anyone for permission. That's the difference. You didn't wait for the world to open the door. You built your own, brick by brick, habit by habit, day by day. And now as you move forward, there's no need to announce your growth. The world will feel it. In how you carry yourself, in how you respond instead of react, in how you stand when everything else shakes, in how you no longer look for shortcuts, because you've lived the long road and it's made you unbreakable. You've discovered that freedom isn't found in doing whatever you want. It's found in doing what you said you would, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's real freedom. Freedom from the emotional roller coaster, freedom from the loop of guilt and restart, freedom from the person you used to be, because that person, the one who postponed, who doubted, who waited, they're gone now, not erased, but evolved. They served their time. They taught you the cost of compromise. And now you walk forward not to prove them wrong, but to honor the version of you that chose to change. You don't need to shout, "I'm different." You don't need to list the habits. Your life already reflects it. Your tone, your walk, your clarity, they say everything. You don't try to convince, you don't try to convert, you simply live in alignment. And that's what draws others in. Not hype, not hustle, alignment. You've made it here not by force, not by luck, but by honoring a decision every day for 90 days. And now you carry something no one can fake. You carry presence, that rare, unshakable stillness that only comes from someone who's done the work in silence. You no longer need reminders. You don't need pep talks. You've become your own standard. While others still chase emotion, you've built identity. While they ask for tips, you've built habits. While they scroll through distractions, you've crafted discipline in the quiet corners of your day. And now you stand on a foundation they can't see, but they'll feel it. When you speak, when you move, when you sit still, there's weight behind you now. Real weight. Earned weight. You are no longer who you were. You didn't just achieve a goal. You reconstructed the system you live by. And the beauty is that no one had to see it happen for it to be real. Because real results don't need marketing. They speak in your tone, in your decisions, in your patterns. This journey, these 90 days, were never about the external transformation. They were about becoming someone you could count on. Someone who didn't break their own promises. Someone whose word to themselves meant more than anyone else's applause ever could. And when people ask you, how did you do it? You won't list strategies. You won't talk about motivation. You'll remember the early mornings, the painful repetitions, the silent nights where you showed up without being asked, and you'll know deep down the only answer that matters: I didn't quit. I kept my word. That's it. That's the system. That's the shift. And from this point forward, you'll never go back. Not because it's forbidden, but because it's unthinkable. You've tasted what it feels like to live aligned, and once you've lived in alignment, anything less feels hollow. This is who you are now, not because of a streak, not because of a motivational video, but because you built something inside yourself that cannot be undone by one off day, one missed rep, or one negative voice. You've trained yourself to listen to something deeper, the truth, the one that doesn't change with moods, the one that says we show up anyway. And now as you move forward, the world will call it discipline. But for you, it's just life. It's just who you are. Because when you commit fully, not halfway, not conditionally, not emotionally, but with your whole self, when you build the structure, protect the environment, keep your promises, and walk the path alone if you have to, there comes a day when you no longer need to try. You simply become. And that version of you, calm, relentless, powerful in silence, becomes the proof that 90 days is not just a challenge, it's the threshold. The threshold between the life you tolerate and the life you were born to lead. You didn't do this for attention. You did it because you finally realized you're worth showing up for. Every single day, without negotiation, without delay, without apology. And now you carry the fire, not the spark, the fire, built from sweat, fed by silence, lit by the decision to never again need permission to be great. You are no longer waiting to begin. You have become the beginning. Let the world feel it. Let them wonder what changed. And just smile, because the answer is already written into every breath you take. You did it, and you're never going back. You don't rise by accident. You rise by system, by building a rhythm that doesn't depend on how you feel, but on who you've decided to become. And once that decision is rooted in your daily actions, there's no force strong enough to pull you back. You stop chasing motivation because you've already built momentum. You stop waiting for clarity because you've already chosen your direction. And that's where everything changes. Not in dramatic moments, but in quiet consistency. It's not about the big declarations you make at midnight. It's about the small, silent victories you repeat every morning. When the alarm rings and you rise. When your body is tired but you still move. When your mind is scattered but you still focus. That's where strength is forged. Not in noise, but in the silence of your follow-through. People will wonder what changed. They'll ask but the truth is, you didn't do something once. You did it daily, repeatedly, relentlessly. And that repetition carved out a new you. A version that doesn't need convincing. A version that doesn't fold under pressure. Because now, pressure isn't something to avoid, it's something you move through. You used to think change was hard, but now you know it's not hard. It's honest. It reveals who you are. It tests whether your word means something to you when no one else is listening. And that's the greatest power, to trust yourself enough to keep going when no one claps, when no one sees, when nothing feels magical. Because that's when the real magic happens. Quiet, deep, permanent. Every time you act without feeling like it, you're proving something deeper than motivation ever could. You're proving that your word means something. That your identity isn't based on mood swings or fleeting sparks, but on principle, on intention, on the fire that burns quietly when the world goes silent. Because anyone can act when it's easy. Anyone can push when the crowd is cheering. But who are you when the noise fades, when the room is empty, when no one is watching? That's when identity is written, not in ink, but in sweat. That's when your future is being built not by chance, but by choice. And here's the truth most never realize. Greatness isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in boring days, in uncelebrated hours, in repetition, the meal prep, the quiet reading, the morning run, the late night journaling, all the things that feel small but stack up into something unshakable. You don't rise all at once. You rise piece by piece. And if you can hold the line, especially on the days when your emotions beg you to break it, you will become someone different. Someone your past self would barely recognize. Not louder, not flashier, but stronger, clearer, calmer. Someone who no longer asks for change but becomes the source of it. Because after 90 days of this, of system over emotion, of action over excuses, you won't just be committed, you'll be transformed.